Hey, what's good, everyone? How are you doing? So my apologies for not getting on right at 5 o'clock, right? So the plan is to have a live stream every Friday at 5 p.m. Central, Chicago time. And so yeah, I went pressed the live right at 5 p.m. And YouTube was like, "Oh, we can't find your camera or whatever." And this is like the second time I went live. You know what I'm saying? So I was scrambling frantically to get the camera going and things like that. But welcome to my closet. As you can see, I got my ladder in the back. You know what I'm saying? Hope folks have been doing well this week. There's definitely a lot of stuff changing, right? It's springtime. And so we have a lot of weather changing, as well as policies around the vaccines and the pandemic and quarantining definitely changing everywhere, right? So, like last week, we had the kindergartners in our local school district that went back to in-person school. They had the option to. We chose not to. I have a kindergartner, and then this week the schools announced in Madison that every grade's going to be going back in like a week or two, and so that's definitely concerning in my opinion. It was interesting because I was scrolling through Facebook news articles. I like to basically just read the headlines and see what's going on. And the other day, and the one article was like saying that the CDC says that people who get the vaccines don't have to wear masks or social distance anymore. And then the next article right under that was um, experts fear that a fourth surge of the pandemic is prevalent. You know, is coming up and can come up any second. So it's interesting to see these conflicting things coming from the Centers for Disease Control and then from non-government affiliated. I forget what the word for people who study germs, epidemiologists, I think, the doctors who study diseases, these epidemiologists who are fearing that there's going to be a fourth surge right around the corner, right? So conflicting information there. And so, I think it's healthy to have a little fear of the government and like when they have their hands in things like the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry. I think you're right to be suspicious that there's some sort of foul play happening there because the government is not a third party that's free from bias, right? Although that is what they paint themselves as being. In fact, we know from our analysis that the government of capitalist states are the people who maintain the status quo of that benefits the capitalists in society, while simultaneously pretending like they're a neutral third party and that they're unbiased and that they're there for the people. But in reality, we know that they're there to help out the capitalists. And so there's this interesting dilemma whenever you're talking about government controlled medical industry, pharmaceuticals, in this case, the Centers for Disease Control, which is a super valuable asset to not just everyone in the United States, but in the entire world, right? There's a lot of really high quality research and a lot of money gets pooled into the Centers for Disease Control to do a lot of useful stuff that helps humanity in general. And they have a great track record. And then but I think it's right to like having seen these two articles like CDC says we don't have to wear masks or social distance if you got a vaccine, and then other epidemiologists talking about a fourth surge is right around the corner. I think it is healthy to like be suspicious of that, but I don't agree with anti-vaxxers in the slightest bit. I'll put that right there. I think that a lot of the rhetoric coming from anti-vaxxers, folks who don't want to vaccinate their children and stuff like that, is it's grounded, right? It has its base in this healthy suspicion of the government, right? I think it's healthy to be suspicious of the government, but they take it to the extreme in that case. And a lot of and we see with the anti-vaxxer movement that it's like a vestige, it's like a facade, or it's like a vessel through which the right wing is propagating really problematic conservative politics. And so you see like this prevalence of racism among folks who are anti-vaxxers, right? And so it's just like in the late 90s, early 90s or so, whenever the right wing, the conservative right wing, found like religion as and utilized religion as a useful vessel to spread right wing ideology. Because yeah, like before the 80s and 90s and things like that, like these really right wing religious like movements and things were not as prevalent, right? Not to say that conservatism hasn't been around inside of religion, and that the institution of, you know, religious institutions are problematic. Obviously, having been in antiquity, being seats of power, and like that replaced the government. Basically, they were the state, right, who supported the status quo and the whims of the capitalist class, and also, you know, the monarchies and the feudalist classes before that, before even capitalism was around, right? Because they go back that far. But yeah, so I see the anti-vaxxer like movement, if you will, as yeah, a shill, a vessel for right wing ideology being spread around. And you know, there's they're very organized about these things. You look into how they did it with religion. There's a lot of money and these institutions that are built to sort of like lobby to conservative religious people, or you know, religious folks, to push conservative ideology as an overall strategy to like push forward like Republican and even more conservative ideals across society, you know, so they can stay in power and whatnot, because that's, they have vested interests, right, to maintain these institutions of politics. And so yeah, so the anti-vaxxer, but I'm really suspicious of the Centers for Disease Control right now, because, like I said in my other videos, during the Trump and Biden debate back in November, or I think it was in November or late October, yeah, when it was really obvious that Biden was more gung ho about opening up the country than Trump was, right? Yeah, he had specific plans for opening up the country, and he, which is problematic, and I don't think there's any denying that, right? Being rushing to open up the country, even right now when all of these variants are spreading like wildfire in different communities across the country, really problematic. And so, yeah, when the whenever he was talking about his plans to open up the country, um, that sort of signaled that he is going to be a friend of the capitalists more than the Republicans are, right? And I think, you know, that's part of the reason why he was able to win this whole promising to open up the country, because it's bad for profits to have the country closed. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why when I see the Centers for Disease Control saying these things, laxing restrictions, you can't help but wonder how based in science is that, or at least partially based in science, and how much is it you know, them pushing for the Biden policy, because of course we know that the Centers for Disease Control is one of the uh, the cabinets that the president gets to choose, right? They get to head up sort of like the policies of the Centers for Disease Control, which is extremely problematic. If I might be mistaken about that, but I believe that's how that works. The CDC is a cabinet appointed position. Let me know if I'm wrong about that. And so that's real interesting. Oh yeah, the other piece of news I was going to mention was Biden just said, I think it was last night, that he's going to have everybody have vaccines by May 1st, which I think is pretty exciting. Yeah, I like that idea. So looking forward to getting a vaccine by May 1st. You know what I'm saying? That's just a few weeks away, if you will, six weeks or something like that. And so yeah, we'll see if he follows through on that. If he does, then that's definitely a good accomplishment for him. You know what I'm saying? I think everybody's going to be relieved by that, regardless of partisan politics, or you know, how uh, anti-capitalist, revolutionary, anti-establishment that you are, right? I think it's exciting news. But then at the same time, right, it's like a strategy, because Biden, on the one hand, is you know, making sure these vaccines happen. Which, who knows, if Trump, if he had won, would he have been able to do it earlier? I don't. Judging by the way he was handling it, it doesn't seem like it. Like he wasn't doing shit right. He wanted the free markets to handle everything. So I don't think Trump would have been able to get it done by May 1st. And again, we'll see if it actually happens on May 1st. That's yet to be seen, right? The promises that lay empty. But on the one hand, there's the vaccines saving lives of children. On the other hand, you have this increased number of children in cages that Biden is, responsible for because he has control over Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, and ICE, right, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, which are those two are part of the Department of Homeland Security, and so you got children in cages, and you have like he deported these 2-month-old baby, and he's like deporting babies and shit like this and separating from their family, and it's just extremely effed up. A common thing I hear from liberals and conservatives whenever I, sorry about that, whenever I mention about the, whenever I mention about the children in cages, um, folks would be like, "Oh, devil's advocate," but do you know that the children in cages were brought over by abusive parents, and that they're saving them from being trafficked and all this crap? But that's mostly a bunch of bullshit, because there's lots of studies that have shown that a lot of these children, I'm sure that happens, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but they use that as an excuse for their xenophobic immigration policies that they constantly enforce. Because, yeah, most of these children are being separated from their families. There's a lot of evidence and studies that have shown that they're being ripped from their families and like deported separately. And it's just business as usual, as Trump did with the xenophobia and separating families simply because they come from across imaginary line, which is utter crap in my opinion. And Trump was continuing the policies of Obama, who was the deporter in chief, and of course Obama's policies go back to Clinton's in 1996, whenever he passed the law that enabled this sort of increased deportations of folks simply because they're come from across the borders. And we know that capitalism allows capital, right, money and whatnot, to cross borders freely, right? So, a banker or a investor, venture capitalist, can send money over to Mexico to invest in something, or to open a company, a corporation, like a manufacturing facility, and pay folks from Mexico who live there a fraction of what they would have to pay American workers. That's no problem. Those capitalists can do that with their capital across the border. But when it comes to folks' bodies, right? So Mexican people who are humans crossing the border, capitalism has a problem with that. And the reason is because if they were able to let folks freely cross the border and come into the United States, there would be no division of the class of the working folks across those lines, because it's extremely profitable, right? It's extremely profitable for the capitalist system to have second-class citizens who are considered, outsiders, or who are, painted as and created to be and depicted as and made to be outsiders, because they can divide the working classes, they can divide folks, right? So folks who come from across the borders, they can go over there and they can pay them, like a quarter or less what they pay American workers, and then that's the thing with capital, whatever they manufacture, they can also send back over to the border in the United States and sell it for the prices that Americans are willing to pay for it, but having had made it in Mexico. And of course, you see lots of the automobile industry happening right by the border of Mexico and the United States, because of those profits, and the fact that with the automobile industry, it's harder to, export the work from overseas in South Asia and Africa and whatnot, just because of the cost. So the closer they do it geographically to the United States, the less they have to pay to transport the finished product back to the country so that they can sell it for profit. And so it behooves them to have our neighboring country, folks who live there, human beings, labeled as outsiders, and they call them illegal aliens, which is a completely fucked up term, right? We don't use that term at all. It's a slur, and prefer to call it undocumented workers, right? Because they're workers, they're humans just like us. There's nothing different besides this imaginary line that they come over. And so I thought I turned that down. You always be hearing that in people's videos. Ding ding. It always annoys me. So sorry about that. So so you got folks from across the border. Hold on. Excuse me. I'll get better at these lives. I probably shouldn't drink on there. A little annoying. So whenever you can divide people by a border, you can get labor cheaper and create a lot more profit for the capitalists. And the one more point I wanted to say about that is, that it's they have this migrant farm workers program from the Department of Agriculture that allows capitalist agricultural corporations, transnational agricultural supergiant, corporations. It's legal for them to hire workers from Mexico who don't have their green cards or whatever, or like maybe even work permits. I don't know exactly the details, but I know that they have these. The Department of Agriculture has this huge exception for folks, so you can come here and work from Mexico and do agricultural work under this rule, and they are only allowed to they're allowed to pay you like a fraction of what the minimum wage is, right? So you actually let folks into the country legally, and then you're legally able to pay them a fraction of what you pay, a minimum wage to workers who in the United States, which is a clever way to get around workers' rights in the United States, right? And so just think if they opened the border, about how much value or how much profit that would cost the capitalists. And so that's the reason why they push xenophobia, and they try to get people through things like the vaccine movement. They try to get people to fear our brothers and sisters and trans comrades from the South, Mexican folks. I have this cool book. It's called something in the barrio, fighting in the barrio. Anyways, it talks about, like the Mexican Revolution in the 19 teens and the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World. And, like there was a lot of bomb ass revolutionary Industrial Workers of the World folks who are from Mexico, and there was a lot of cross-border collaboration, and the IWW had a hand in the Mexican Revolution, and so that was interesting. I haven't read that yet. I got to read that still. So you got that. So I want to talk about Meghan Merkle and Prince Harry, right? Because you got that Oprah interview again with Meghan Merkle and then Prince Harry, and there's all this astounding information, which is not astounding at all, that like how racist the monarchy in England, in the United Kingdom, was to Meghan Merkle and her baby, right? So I remember a few months ago when Meghan Merkle and Prince Harry, they quit, right? They had quit being dudes not a prince, and I don't know if that makes her a princess or a duchess or something like that, or whatever she was, but she quit to quit the monarchy, which first of all you don't hear about in the first place. It's like, oh, you can quit the monarchy or whatever, which is an interesting concept. And so I was thinking, okay, yeah, that's pretty cool, like fucking fuck these establishments, authoritarian, you know what I mean, like institutions of capitalism that like the monarchy is and continues to be. And quit that shit. You don't need that power anyways. And I didn't hear anything about like how racist they were treating Meghan Merkle and everything. until recently. And so yeah, now I see like this interview. I didn't watch it, but I watched some clips from it. I'm sure folks have all seen that one where it's like, yeah, they were worried about the color of the baby's skin. Like, oh, will the baby be looking black or what? You know, just like blatant racism, very expected, especially in the UK and the United States, this anti-black racism that's prevalent here, that the society functions off of and could not live without, right? So that's nothing surprising, but still horrible to hear about, that they would think about a little baby like that, first of all. And yeah, just that they're judging folks by the color of their skin, you know what I'm saying? And then that reminds me of like the one drop rule, where it's like, doesn't matter how light folks' skin are. Blackness is, you know, folks are considered black regardless of how you know how dark their skin is. And that's like a social construct for sure that has real life implications. So it's not just abstract, right? It has super real life implications. And so, yeah, that was interesting. Did y'all watch that at all? Let me know in the comments if you checked that out, what you thought about the Meghan Merkle Oprah interview. And then it's funny because, right, ironically, Oprah is this billionaire, like one of the richest people in the world and shit like that. So in a way, it's like, uh, yeah, you know, these damn billionaires can't get away from them. But at least she's a black woman who's like against that racist bullshit and called it out. So glad to see that that happened. Kudos to Oprah. You get a guillotine. You get a guillotine. You get a guillotine. Look under your chairs. Look under your chairs right now. Everybody gets a guillotine. You know what I'm saying? Guillotines as individual weapons and not authoritarian structures, right? Portable guillotines, ones that you can hold in your hand and go around and do that self-defense and that insurrection with. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you know, okay, so that brings up an interesting point, which comes up all the time. And I'm gonna be doing a one of the chopping block videos about this too. That's my series. If you haven't checked out the chopping block, it's like a highly edited series of political commentary that I do. There's a playlist for it. Maybe I'll put a link up here. Maybe, yeah, I'll put a link up there for the chopping block. And then so yeah, so there's this article, right, on the anarchist left. It's on this really cool platform, this website called Crime Think. That's CrimeThinc, no K at the end. Crime Think, which is a dope kind of reference to an illegalist like politics, which I'm personally attracted to. It's kind of insurrectionary, autonomous, illegalist, anarchist tendency, right? And Crime Think is a great place for really dope analysis from an anarchist perspective, and I suggest everybody check that out if you have not. I'm gonna move it in here. Crime Think. Oh, my buttons on my computer, they like double tap all the time. Tons of them on this Mac. And so it's yeah, real messy sometimes. I'm constantly having to erase everything. Double E's, double I, double E, double I, double O, double O, double E, low. So crimethink.com, they have this really good article, and it's about the guillotine, right? And they say that in the article they're talking about how the guillotine is an authoritarian symbol, and we should dispose of it. We should not be thinking of it as like a symbol of the revolution, because, and they make the argument about how, you know, it's very authoritarian. How, well, first of all, it's not like abolitionist, right? Which is a good point. It's not like if somebody does something wrong, right? We want restorative justice. We don't want to execute them necessarily, because we want to show that anybody is rehabilitable in society as long as we have the proper sort of support for that person. And so, like, that's how we show, and that's why we know that the modern day prison industrial complex and the so-called justice system in the United States does not actually get rid of crimes at all. It does nothing to do that, but rather it's an institution of racism and anti-working class, strike breaking and anti-working class establishmentarianism. And so I like that word. But yeah, so the prison system, and we believe in as abolitionists, we believe in a system not of prison to be punitive as a punishment for someone's crimes, but rather we believe in restorative justice. We believe that everybody is rehabilitable, and that justice is not brought through imprisoning people, and justice is not brought through, executing people, right? And so they made a really good point about the guillotine in this article, that it's like, first of all, that's not abolitionist. There's no restorative justice there. And then they made some other points in the article about how just the way that deaths in the guillotine go down, right? It's like this. It was during the what was it called, the terror, the reign of terror, yeah, that's what it's called, in the French Revolution, whenever like way many people were being executed for maybe even just looking the wrong way at the revolutionaries, at the Jacobins and whatnot. And so yeah, they talk about in the article, whenever you have like an assembly of folks who decide democratically, like 50% or whatever, that this person needs to die, that's actually the tyranny of the majority, right? So it's like, is that the kind of society that we want to build? Because there's very cogent critiques of democracy, I think, coming from the anarchist left, talking about how, like, why should we have to go along? We want autonomy, right? Even so, we can vote in your democratic system, but if we lose the vote, we should have the right to our autonomy and go to do whatever we want, and maybe not agree and go along with the democratic decision, because and that's why, because the democratic decision can be easily manipulated to be authoritarian. In this case, the argument's easily made that it's authoritarian in that the majority has authority over the minority, and that's always an authoritarian dynamic that can't be gotten rid of. And so they say, no, some folks say, maybe forget about democracy, let's have autonomy, and let's have a consensus model, right? So we only do stuff whenever everybody agrees, and that way we're able to achieve stuff without the authority in our movements and in our processes. And so yes, that's one good critique they have of the guillotine. But then I found in that article by Crime Think that it came off as a little bit pacifist, right? In my opinion, because it's like, I think that there's a lot of rhetoric around violence in the United States, in this society, and many other societies. So like, violence is seen as being a bad thing, when in fact violence is a neutral thing, and it's a tool to do things with, right? It's neither good nor is it bad. In the hands of the state, when the police are brutalizing and killing Black people, that's bad violence, right? But in the hands of the revolutionaries, in the hands of folks who are oppressed and repressed, who use violence to protect themselves from the out of control state and the police, like, that's violence is a good thing, right? So insurrection and revolutionary violence is not necessarily a bad thing, if it ends up being able to overthrow the system and establish a liberatory system, and get rid of these extremely repressive, yeah. So yeah, you can get rid of this extremely repressive system of government that we're in now, that results in millions of deaths every year. That brings me back. Did you hear there's 44 million people that are on the brink of famine right now around the globe, which is really problematic. You know what I'm saying? This is the United Nations numbers, and I might be digressing now, but the 44 million folks, it's interesting because if you look at the United Nations statistics, there's actually been enough food that was produced in the world, like every year in modern history, more than enough for everybody in the world to be to eat and not be die from starvation. But yet, because of the system of capitalism and the way that goods are distributed for profit as opposed to people who need them, we have this situation where there's massive famine and millions of people die every year across the globe because they don't have food when they don't need to, right? But these capitalists and capitalism holds on to that food for the profit, or sometimes they just destroy it, right? Like, and there's lots of cases where it's more profitable to store food and then, depending on the prices and the supplies and the demand, just completely destroy that food, right? And while people are going hungry, which is extremely problematic. And then that also brings up a point. I heard that 5% of the US military budget annually could literally solve world hunger. Yeah, word. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah, because you think about, they produce enough food um, to feed everyone, but it's not exactly free to distribute to everyone, right? So not only do they have the lost profits from manipulating supply and demand to create the largest profit motive, but also there is a cost to distributing it. And so yeah, you would have to have 5% of the U.S. military budget annually. Yep, and or have the capitalists come up off those food and stop, stop hoarding it and stop destroying it. Right. So like a system that doesn't incentivize those things too. But that's a good point. So these the 44 million famine. So I have this audiobook called by Sylvia Federici, and it talks about like charity, like so food charity, and folks, countries who are starving across the globe, right? The United Nations, they provide a lot of charity. They give food and they give resources to folks who are starving, and she argues that that actually just contributes to the situation, right? Because what you have is like a colonial structure, right? And the United Nations, I forget what the hunger one is called. Is it called UNICEF or something like that? But anyways, the United Nations, when they go in and they feed folks who are hungry, right? It's good, definitely. Folks who are hungry need to get fed. But the reason that these folks are hungry in the first place is because the colonialist structures that resulted in the agricultural systems in those areas being completely inadequate, right? So it's like they go in there and they do economic terrorism, if you will, in countries where they colonize, and they go in there, they manipulate the price of different goods that people grow so that it becomes completely unprofitable for them to grow sustenance food. And so yeah, they go into a country in Africa, colonize it either by force or with economic terrorism, saying, oh, we're going to sanction you if you don't do this and this and this, and like folks are like, they can't get sanctioned because like that results in horrible things for the people in the country, right? A lot of people died. Just think about in Iraq when hundreds of thousands of children died during the 90s because of U.S. sanctions. And so yeah, they threaten them, and they make their agricultural industry and products focus on things that they need in the supply chain. So like, say the capitalists need some corn for their ethanol projects or something like that, they go and they colonize a country in Africa, and they'll manipulate the supplies and demands and like the incentives that they give for people to grow certain crops, so that all the farmers have to grow this crop that capitalism needs for them to export it, right? Because if the farmers don't grow it, they're going to starve and lose their job themselves, because there's no profit in growing sustenance food, and then that ends up resulting in starvation across the country because there's no food being grown there. And we have this concept of borders that keep people separated that I was talking about earlier, right? That makes it so it's not necessarily profitable for folks to sell food for cheap in that country. And then you have a bunch of starving folks who have been manipulated by economic capitalist colonialism, whether it be with violence or not. A lot of times it is. And and so whenever they give charity and free food to folks in countries who are starving, in a way they're maintaining that system of colonization. It's like a crucial pin, it's the crucial underpinning of that whole system of colonization and agricultural manipulation of across the country. And so Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. You said really that many for I don't know. I said so many things. Sorry, I was talking so fast. What do you mean by that many? That many of which? Okay, so the I also wanted to go back to the guillotine thing, right? So the folks, that's why I say like individual guillotines, right? Because basically I think it's revolutionary, and it's okay. My class is starting, so I got to go, but this was such an interesting live, dude. Bye. All right, Sam. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by. Okay, I'm gonna be here every Friday at 5, so stop by then too. I'll keep babbling though. Peace out, man. Have a good class. I'm sorry, man. I don't know your gender pronoun, so excuse me for calling you man. But peace out, fam. So the thing about the guillotines is that I think it's useful to have a symbol of revolutionary violence, because I think that pushes through neoliberal, progressive, pacifist rhetoric that serves to be anti-revolutionary, extremely problematic, right? So it's like whenever these pacifists talk about, oh, we need to, we need to make guns illegal and things like that. What they end up doing is supporting state repression against folks who are more marginalized in society without maybe knowing about it, right? They think that they're doing good. They're, they're anti-violence, because violence is, can be horrible, right? Like nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants their loved ones to get hurt, or community members even really necessarily, right? And so yeah, and then they advocate for more power to the states to be racist and discriminate, which is what they already do. And so like these gun control policies, we see black folks in the United States are sitting in jail in the prison industrial complex at extremely disproportionate rates when it comes to guns and self-defense, right? So this whole rhetoric of anti-violence and pacifism feeds directly into the anti-black racism of the establishment, in my opinion. And so I think it's useful to have the guillotine as a symbol, as a revolutionary left symbol, you know what I'm saying? And I do think it's cogent. The arguments that they were making about authoritarianism and the guillotine, for sure. That's why I say that we should have individually yielded guillotines, where we can just do it for self-defense, right? So if you think about the kind of violence that would be like acceptable from an abolitionist restorative justice perspective in a revolution, right? So like the kind where you find someone guilty and then you sentence them to death, not so much, right? Because that mirrors the capital punishment of the capitalist state, which is problematic. But the kind where you're on the battlefield and when you're on the battlefield and you commit violence on the actors of the capitalism in order for self-defense or for a strategic positional win, or for strategy, right? In the moment, though, that's different. And so that's why I say individual guillotines instead of the big guillotines in the town center, right? That's more of an authoritarian structure, I would say. So the individual guillotines are also uh, useful. Yeah, because da, 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 da. Excuse me. Yeah, so the individual guillotines could be useful tools because they're symbols of revolution, like in the highest way that you just can't deny, in my opinion, because of because of the role that they played in the French Revolution and the overthrowing of monarchy in France, and unfortunately the establishment of capitalism, which is true, although there was some sort of communist potential during the guillotines. And so I think it would be like bad PR, or like not the best marketing for revolution, to just get rid of the guillotine symbol. I think it's almost an established mainstream symbol of revolutionary violence that's righteous, right? And so I think we would be remiss and foolish, I guess, if we were to discard the guillotine as a symbol of revolution. So instead of the guillotines in the town center, where folks find someone guilty of a crime and then they decide they're going to die, which is not restorative justice and not abolitionist, we have individual guillotines somehow. I don't know, guillotine guns or something. I don't know. But I propose that we we keep the guillotine as a symbol of revolution because it represents righteous revolutionary violence, and because it represents sort of this anti-capitalist, communist, sort of things, and it's very widely accepted, right? So you talk about a guillotine, folks know what you're talking about and what you're down with, and I think that's going to be the way that we build. I think it's going to be a useful tool to building mass resistance and mass uprisings and overthrowing of capitalism. You know what I'm saying? So I had another thing on my notes, right, for the uh, for the news that I was just watching. Um, and again, I'm going to mention this again because I've been watching like Democracy Now! A lot, which I know is not the most revolutionary anti-capitalist news outlet that there is. I do like the fact that they have news every day. There's a lot of veiled anti-blackness and things like that, and sort of pro-establishment lines, underpinnings to the show for sure. But they also have a lot of cool stuff on there. So I like to take that and use Democracy Now! As a good way to just sort of pay attention to what's going on, at least the bigger things. They're not going to tell you about the revolutionary struggles. Hey, hello, I'm Brazilian. What's up, Joe Kagan? Hello, I'm Brazilian, and these days I found your song Rebel Beat recently on Instagram stories. I thought it was very good. Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, Rebel Beat. Y'all should check that out. Have you checked out my new song too? It's called Kisses and Molotovs. It's been out for 2 weeks. Check that out on Spotify too. You know what I'm saying? I got links in the I'm trying to think because this is my second live stream, so I'm not sure how to leave links. I think I'll leave it after I publish this. I'll leave it in the comments. I think that's the way to do. Let me look into that. But yeah, I'd like to know for news sources, right? Because Democracy Now! Really appreciate the support, Joe Kagan, and thank you for stopping by the way. But yeah, for Democracy Now! um, it's a good news source, not the most left, and they won't tell you about the revolutionary struggles and all of the grassroots movements that are happening across the country, like something like It's Going Down does, right? It's Going Down does a really good job at keeping track of anti-repression work, and all of the different movements that are happening across the country. It's goingdown.org. You all should check that out for sure. And then another cool one is Enough is Enough 14. And so, yeah, Enough is Enough 14. They have a cool, it's kind of like It's Going Down, but they do global news, right? So they're really good at picking up on the different movements that are happening, all the different wins that are going down, and all the repression that's happening among the anti-capitalist left globally. You know what I'm saying? It's really useful because you look at news sources like Democracy Now! And you go look on Facebook at their news feed. I do that a lot too. Just read the headlines, see what's going down. Barely ever actually read one of their articles. Because I'm not that into the capitalist mainstream media, you know what I'm saying? But it's cool to hear the deadlines, to see the headlines, read the headlines to see how they're trying to manipulate us and whatnot. But yeah, it's really useful to have these outlets like It's Going Down and Enough is Enough 14, because without hearing about the wins and all of the great organizing that's happening around the country and around the globe, you can really feel isolated and like we're not winning and that it's hopeless. And so those outlets, they're both anarchist outlets, right? And I'm down for reading communist news outlets. I feel like a lot of communists and Marxist organizations and news outlets don't do as good a job at reporting on individual movement stuff like those two do. It's Going Down and Enough is Enough 14. And that has to do with the underlying politics and beliefs, sort of like anarchists believe in decentralized autonomous struggles more. Not that they don't believe in organizations, but lots of Marxists believe that like the struggles against anti-capitalism are going to be happening in the workplace, in these big organizations like the Democratic Socialists of America and whatnot, Socialist Alternative and things like that. And so a lot of the reporting you hear from these Marxist outlets, at least in the United States, I know that it's different in different countries, is going to be like focusing on labor organizing and stuff that's happening around their organizations, struggles that they've been in. And so I really appreciate these anarchist outlets, Enough is Enough 14 and itsgoingdown.org. The reason I mention this is I would like to hear from y'all what sort of news sources y'all use. And yeah, don't be embarrassed. Put it in the comment and then I'll go check it out. Like I said, I check out Facebook stories, so no shame in checking out the mainstream media outlets. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm checking out New York Times posts, the headlines. Uh, I used to have New York Posts in that feed too, and they're just so fucking full of it and so transphobic and racist. I just like I said, don't see any more from New York Post because yeah, they're just so pompous and disgusting. I can't stand that. I don't know if that they made a turn to the right recently either, or if they've been like that. I don't remember them being so racist and transphobic. But of course, we live in divisive times right now, right, where society and the political spectrum is polarized very much so, and so possibly it is like a newer contemporary thing that they that they're so right wing. So yeah, let me know what news sources you use. Oh, hey folks, if you're enjoying the content, I just dropped an audiobook yesterday. It was called NY Post have always been shite bags. Okay, yeah. I didn't used to read the headlines as steadily. I do it like every day now. Probably because I'm so addicted to my phone, and so I just like scrolling through the headlines. Oh, what's happening? What's happening? Maybe because I'm older now, and older people are boring like that. Although I'm still revolutionary all the way, anti-capitalist. But yeah, thank you. Oh, it said that your comment was held for review, so I had to click show the comment. I'm new to this live streaming stuff, so this is all new to me. But yeah, I guess because you said shite bags, but definitely shite bags. F them. And so yeah, what was I gonna say? These. So one thing. Oh man, I'm sorry. I don't remember what I was saying. Let me know if I do. If you remember what I was saying. But one more thing on my list of headlines: 62,000 infections and 1,500 deaths just yesterday in the United States from COVID-19. And so, I'm really glad that starting May 1st, Biden's allegedly going to be giving everybody vaccines. First of all, we'll see if that happens. And second of all, this shit could have happened a lot earlier. We should nationalize, I'm an anarchist, but I still believe, like, I consider myself an anarchist communist. Yeah, probably the language. Yeah. So yeah, I believe that it would be useful personally. Let me know what y'all think about this and your tendencies of anarchism. If the state nationalized the pharmaceutical and medical industries, I think that should happen, even as an anarchist, right? So I think that would result in lower costs, and it would be a lot better for folks if the state nationalized the pharmaceutical and the medical industries in the United States and had a national health service. You know what I'm saying? I don't know of any countries that have a national pharmaceutical industry, but maybe I'm mistaken. I don't know if y'all do, but yeah, like we could have did this and had these vaccines out. You know what I'm saying? I think the New Deal shows that that's possible. Things are possible. The government is able to take over capitalism more than it ever does, right? And like make shit happen, and but they only do that in extreme crisis whenever it's kind of looking like capitalism is going to fail and they're going to lose their power forever, right? You know what I'm saying? And in the current age of neoliberal austerity, like they weren't as close, right, with this, so they didn't have to do that, but they could have. So Joe Kagan be like, Brazil is falling apart. The situation here looks like an apocalypse. 2,286 deaths in 24 hours and 270,000 deaths in total. Wow, yeah, that's fucked up for sure. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope that you don't know, folks. That's really messed up. Yep. Yeah, the Democracy Now! Talks about Brazil a lot with COVID because just horrible policies. And Bolsonaro, proto-fascist, probably full fascist dude, straight coughing on people. Dude had like COVID and he was walking around and inside of crowds with no masks, like even worse than Trump, in my opinion. Like that dude was really bad. And yeah, I guess we're the only country that has more deaths and infections than you. And I don't know if that 2286 deaths was recently, but that definitely trumps us. We had 1,500 deaths just yesterday. And so yeah, it brings up this shit. It's like these policymakers, right? And we got like the Dane County, the county here, is just like laxing the policies around what employees, right? So when it talks when we talking about like COVID-19 quarantining policies, I think it's problematic whenever we try to police individuals, right? And so like here they were like, oh, we're gonna start arresting people who don't follow the rules, and I think that's a bullshit kind of policy and quarantining policy to help COVID. The good kind are whenever you put restrictions on these billionaire corporations. Like there's this healthcare software company here called Epic, and they were trying to open up their workplace, even though everybody can work from home from Epic because it's all software shit. There's nothing hardware being produced or anything. They just want to be able to control their workers. But whenever these policymakers put policies on these capitalists to help the spread of COVID, I think that's useful personally. And so yeah, they're laxing the restrictions on restaurants and things like that, and in different industries here in Dane County. And so I went and rambled again, but just the fact that you know what I mean, like they're laxing these policies. They could have done okay. Yeah, I remember what I was gonna say. Sorry. So they're laxing these policies, and they're opening up schools, right? And in the meantime, there's literally thousands of people who are dying. You know what I'm saying, over these things. Like you talk about 9/11 here, when the Twin Towers were destroyed by some folks from the Taliban, and the 3,000 people that die. Well, we have that in like 2 days, every fucking 2 days for like the last year. You know what I'm saying? And so when is it okay, like theoretically, right, as a talking point, when is it okay, and when are people going to be like throwing down? You know what I'm saying? Like how many lives of policymakers are equivalent, are worth the lives of these 2,000, 1,500 people that are dying every day? And it's like, at what point that the thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of bodies pile up, is it okay for us or someone, not necessarily us, to utilize revolutionary violence to sort of get shit done? You know what I'm saying? Like borrowing from the Weather Underground of the 1960s and other such institutions like the BLA, the Black Liberation Army, right? Where it's like, it's a fucking war zone here. Like there's thousands of people dying every fucking day. And so like, when is it okay to retaliate and like use the revolutionary violence to stop that shit? Because in a lot of cases it could. Here in Madison, they bombed the Sterling Hall, which was where they were Dow Chemical was like creating some horrible bombs for the Vietnam War. And it's like, a lot of folks think some of those, it's folks are split on it, but a lot of folks think actions like that are useful and led to frickin' the end of the Vietnam War and maybe saved millions of lives. Like one person died in that bombing here in Sterling Hall. They weren't trying to kill anyone, but like how many tens of thousands of lives did that save? And it sucks that it was an innocent person. They fucked up for sure, and they should never have targeted an innocent person. It was like somebody cleaning up or doing some experiment that was in the building, Sterling Hall, and they didn't expect it. And so yeah, it's like fucking yeah. And this is all of course theoretical, and we're looking at historical examples and shit like that, but that's messed up. So yeah, the fact that they have this May 1st deadline for vaccines is definitely a boon, and we'll see what happens. But hey, folks, you also check out that David Harvey audio zine I did yesterday. It's pretty cool. Let me tell you a little bit about it. I'll plug it. So I've been doing audiobooks for years and recording them, putting them on YouTube. I try to pick authors who won't do copyright infringement, because basically it's really easy to get copyright strikes if you put audiobooks up. So I choose communist authors for that reason, but also because that's the kind of politics I'm trying to spread around to folks, right? Because I think it's really important for changing society for the better and ending all the suffering that we see among folks, here in the United States and across the world from, imperialist American policies. And so I did this audio zine, David Harvey, Consolidating Power. And in it, he argues from a Marxist perspective about how we need to stop focusing on organizing the workplaces, and we need to organize in communities and neighborhoods. And he really props up like anarchist organizing and anarchist theorists in the article, and does it from a Marxist perspective. He talks about Capital Volume 2 and the point of realization of profit versus the point of production, which is what a lot of classical Marxists focus on when they talk about revolution. Oh, we need to organize at the point of production. He says, well, actually, Marx talked about, organizing potentials at the point of profit realization. And so, where landlords get their money, that's part of the place where the profit is realized for the capitalist class. And so we need to organize there. And especially nowadays, when urban life is so much more different than in Marx's time, it becomes more important than what he laid out. You know what I'm saying? And so, he says some things about anarchists that I don't agree with, that I take issue with. But I thought I'd put it up there because I like I like Marxist theory of folks who who are who aren't workerist. Basically, we call it workerism, right? So I like to prop up Marxist folks who are non-workerist, anti-workerist. Another good Marxist like that is Sylvia Federici. So, all right, folks, check out that audiobook. It's streaming. It's the last video I uploaded yesterday. And I'm going to be trying to have the chopping block, my highly edited, theoretical, they're like theses, not theses, but I guess they're like theses or whatever, every Wednesday. I'm going to be dropping that. And every Friday at 5 p.m. Central, join us for the live stream. We can have a conversation. What's up, President Longboy? How you doing? And then every Thursday, I'm going to be trying to drop a zine. So that's 3 days a week. We're going to be active on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to stay tuned. You'll get notifications completely free, obviously. Like this video if you liked some stuff that I'm saying and things like that. And yeah, I got to go. 6 o'clock. I got to do some stuff with the kids and things like that. And so I'm going to catch y'all next Friday. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate y'all. President Longboy. Yes. Good. This was up. Y'all follow President Longboy. That's my brother, by the way. A YouTuber. Got some dope daily forecast. You know what I'm saying? All right, y'all. Peace out. I will catch you later. It was nice talking to y'all. I like it. Love it.